Welcome back to another edition of Celtics Roundtable on CLNS Media, everybody. CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audio-video coverage of the Boston Celtics. Take two here with Jared Weiss, the most interesting man in the world. I'll keep that going.
Down two, let's keep going.
Yeah, why not? He covers the Celtics for CLNS Media and for CelticsBlog. He hosts the Garden Report post-game show. He's all over the internet constantly. He's a member of PBWA. Is that professional bowling?
I wish. I'm a terrible bowler. Pro Basketball Writers Association.
Ah, okay. Well,
we just have competitive writing contests. It's very exciting stuff.
That sounds riveting for the guests at home. But we're joined by Jared Weiss, day two here, and we really want to get into a little bit more about Isaiah Thomas because the Isaiah Thomas conundrum was one last year. It will continue to be one as long as he's on a Celtics roster, and he is signed to a very team-friendly deal. The Isaiah Thomas contract will be something that lurks over the Celtics' heads, I think, for pretty much the entire season next year, pending how Isaiah Thomas plays. Now, it's a tricky cap situation, and everybody's kind of talked about this and what Thomas might be able to command in the open market. You see what Kyle Lowry just got from Toronto, and you see somebody that might be setting the market for Isaiah Thomas. You know, Kyle Lowry didn't really have a lot of suitors, and that kind of hurt him in getting that max. Like, I think Toronto helped him out a little bit, but anyway, you look at Isaiah Thomas, the landscape for Isaiah Thomas coming up into free agency next year. Do you think Isaiah Thomas will command a max contract here?
I think he's going to have the same offseason that Kyle Lowry just had, which would be pretty good for the Celtics because the concern with Isaiah isn't the monetary value, it's the years. It's making sure that you're out from under the deal around the time where his body could start to break down on him, or I wouldn't say break down on him, but just that he could lose that pop because like his game is all about his athleticism, his agility, which enables him to pull off his insane skill. So if he gets to 32 and he can't literally bounce off of people the way he does in like an almost unprecedented way that I've never really seen before, that really hurts his effectiveness. That takes away the like insane amount of separation that he can get, which allows him to barely get off his shots, which are all insane circuit shots that somehow fall through. I don't understand how he does anything that he does. So, and he's a small dude, by the way. You know, I talked to him. I'm 6 feet tall, and I feel like I'm talking to like a newborn baby half the time. He's very small. He is insane. He's like an unbelievable scorer. One of the most remarkable scorers I've ever seen. So, getting a 3-year deal, I think, would make things extremely palatable. And then he's worth the 33 or so that he would start at, depending on what the cap figure is next year. Let's assume it's around 102 or 4 or something like that.
We talk about Isaiah Thomas and sort of the pop going, and that's always the fear with we have a guy who's 5'9", on the roster, who is your motor and your scorer. But I think that what's eventually going to answer this question about Isaiah Thomas, his market, and, ultimately the years that he's going to be offered is what is Isaiah Thomas and Gordon Hayward going to look like? Because now the Celtics have another offensive engine, and you can start running Isaiah Thomas off of the ball in ways with people that are not Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart is an incredibly, capable player whom I adore very deeply because of the floor stats and everything like that. But, having Gordon Hayward handling the ball and, coming off of these pin downs and other things like that for Isaiah Thomas spotting up in the corner, that's very different from having Marcus Smart running that. And I think that that sort of command, we saw how much of a leap he took when Al Horford came to the team, and just having that extra attention, that extra, lubricant on the offense, how much that helped him sort of take that next step. And I think that Gordon Hayward will be much of the same. And, will Isaiah Thomas be like the same amount of effectiveness? Will he be, finished with MVP votes and be second team All NBA for, a 4-year contract? Probably not, but he can still be a very effective player. He's a very good 3-point shooter. And at the end of the day, being a very good 3-point shooter has, that's $10 million in value right there with the finishing and the contact, that will probably more likely than not go away. But again, bet against Isaiah Thomas at your own risk. He's literally made a career out of.
Yeah,
he's listening to the show and putting the chip of the show on his shoulder.
Right, exactly.
I hope so.
Even though we're all saying he's a max player and is a great player, of course.
Right, exactly. I mean, I would not lose any sleep over giving Isaiah Thomas 5 years at $20 million. I know that there would be tax issues. Yeah, I know. I think that, there would be tax issues. You might have to make a decision at some point. I think Al Horford is not going to age as badly, and I think that there's a strong chance he might leave. When he gets to opt out after season after next, I believe. And he would be the one, that coincides with Jalen's rise, and you sort of get these rolling max guys coming off the books as your young guys need to get paid, which makes a lot of sense. But I really think that Isaiah Thomas, there's a lot to be said, and I think that his value is a little bit underappreciated just because people see the absolute ridiculous things that he can do and think, no, there's no way he can keep that up. And probably, but the auxiliary parts of Isaiah Thomas's game are still very valuable and very important. And I think that you could, especially Brad Stevens, could definitely find a way to make him worth $20 million, even if that sort of deterioration does come sooner rather than later, especially with, these young guys aging in and Gordon Hayward now in the fold. But I mean, we'll see. That's what this season is for, and that's why they waited. That's part of the reason this waited. They can sort of gauge how this situation plays out once they get to see the team for a year.
So first off, as far as the 520 idea that you've come up with, great try. I applaud your effort. However, one thing is that's 100 million there versus 3 years, 33 million. It's the same amount of money over longer years, which means because it's not about the total value of the contract. It's that combined with the years, 3 years at 33 million still means at least two more years after that where he's making even more money. So he's losing a ton of money if he does that. Obviously,
if he gets to 33 million.
Exactly. So that's the question. Is he going to get that? I mean, the Celtics, they're in this, I don't know how, I mean, obviously they've probably talked to him to a certain degree about it before because, they are allowed to because he's on their team. He has some sort of understanding, although he can't help himself to constantly mention that he wants to get paid the max in public. Yeah. So,
which is smart metaphor. Yeah, which is still rolling.
Yeah, and you do that to set your market value. That's why every agent, when their players are restricted free agent, they're like, my player was drafted in the lottery, and he knows how to tie his shoes. That's why he's going to get a 4-year max contract on the open market. Like, that's what every agent does. So that's why KCP is signed to a 1-year deal with the Lakers now. It doesn't always work. But with Isaiah, I think he wants to get the money now because that chip on the shoulder thing is like legit, and he's been playing along, letting them give Al Horford the money, and he's begging Al to come, begging Gordon to come, and they're giving him the money. He could walk away even because it would be such a slap in the face if they try to lowball him. So I don't think he wants to stretch out years. He wants the money now because he believes in himself clearly that he's going to earn another contract. And so finding, I think the 3-year max is the best option because you probably pay another $40 million in tax each year or something like that. I don't know obviously exactly what it is, but you're going to be paying a ton of tax in this contract. It's going to be very expensive. But Pags says, the owner Pagliuca says that they're willing to pay the tax. He didn't put a number on that when he said that publicly recently. I do know that
very smart.
Yeah, he never put a number on that.
Yeah, he was smart. He didn't go, we are willing to pay $217 million. Like he was, yeah.
Hey, $5 million in tax.
Like Cleveland right now is carrying something around $100 million in tax.
Right.
Their payroll is going to be over 200.
Yeah, they're not going.
And it's going to get higher because teams are going to be paying more tax now after the cap jump. So I think there's going to be a new normal in the NBA where teams are going to be flirting with 150 to 200 million in tax to compete. Like the Warriors, who I think will probably be somewhere near there once they finally sign Clay and Draymond and everybody is completely signed up. Boston, they are pretty reticent, from what I understand, to pay 200 million in tax, but I think that's going to be the new normal now. Yeah. And I mean, their team is probably, if they sold, I mean, let's find out what happens with the Houston sale. That'll be a good indicator of what these teams are really worth. The Clippers sale was considered inflated when it was bought for $2 billion. The Rockets put themselves up on the market on Monday. Most people think they're going to be getting over $2 billion. But at the end of the day, if you own an NBA team, as long as you're not literally using it to like launder money to like sell drugs in Miami or something like that, you're gonna be making a pretty good profit off of it. And Boston makes a ton of money off of it. They're gonna pay a big tax bill. I think it's just a matter of keeping it under 200 million. Ideally.
Yeah, we talked to Albert Nahman about that of Heat Hoops.
Oh, really?
He's an excellent capologist, and if you guys haven't followed the stuff, you should. He's amazing. And he was like, basically, because he was laying out, because this is back when the Paul George trade was on the table, and it was like, so the Celtics take on Gordon Hayward, Paul George this year. That's great. They can make that work by doing this, 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 and this, and it was really awesome. And then we got into this really great discussion about how Boston's bench and their depth and that young core would be somewhat eliminated, piece by piece as they start to sign more guys. Like Isaiah Thomas has to come back, and Paul George have to come back to make that trade somewhat worth it. So then you're going to get into, kind of getting rid of your young core a little bit, piece by piece. And he basically came out and said, in order for teams to compete now, you have to go absurdly over and into the tax and pay an absurd amount of tax money just to compete with what Golden State's putting out there. Like if you don't pay like 200 million, 150 or whatever it is, like or 100 million in tax, like you're just not going to be able to compete with some of the better teams in the NBA. That's just where we're at right now. So it's just interesting to have that sentiment echoed by somebody else. Like, yeah, look, folks, this is where the NBA is. It's where it's going. In order to compete with what Golden State has put out there with 4 Hall of Fame players on their team, you have to pay that much money to get that kind of talent in. So regardless of what happens with the Celtics, like that tax bill is going to be enormous. Isaiah Thomas is probably going to be part of the reason why that tax bill is so enormous. It's just depending on, like, the season he's going to have is going to dictate a lot of what the Celtics do. Like, if he comes out after this hip injury, and they still haven't announced what the next step is for Isaiah's hip, right? We don't even know.
We're probably going to find out this week. If not, we're going to find out by the end of the week, I think.
All right. Yeah, we might have it might happen before this podcast airs. So if it happens before this podcast airs, our bad. But like, we had to see what this hip, like, what is Isaiah going to look like? If Isaiah Thomas is the same, not obviously not the second best scoring season in Celtics history, good, but he's going to be still pretty good. And that guy deserves a good amount of money. And not only because he's helped you recruit to get guys there, he's been a 2-time All-Star, a second-team All-NBA guard, in a league that's full of guards that are awesome. Like, you got to look at around the league. You have obviously Steph and Clay and Russell Westbrook and James Harden and Kyle Lowry and John Wall and Brad. Like, in order to get on those teams as like a second All-NBA, that's an unbelievable season. So Isaiah Thomas is worth that money if this hip injury isn't a big deal.
And I want you guys to be really careful and take some kind of fire safety precautions here, because when Isaiah Thomas comes out and he's recovering from injury and Gordon Hayward's on this team now and his scoring average drops by 6 or 7 points, the hot takes are going to burn down the city of Boston.
Oh, I can't wait.
There's going to be so much, James Sullivan's going to be out there, on the horn, yammering about how Isaiah's garbage and all that stuff. I'm going to have. Go ahead.
He's getting paroled soon, and I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not excited about it. I did Walpole. God bless the people of Walpole Correctional Facility. If you guys, I pulled together the estimates real quick while we were sitting here. Where they're starting around 147 to 148 million next year if they were to max Isaiah Thomas, and give him that first 3-year max, which. And that's estimating Marcus Smart at around 13 million, which I think is fair. That's what his cap hold is at currently.
Pretty conservative if this year goes well.
Yeah, more. Right. It could be quite a bit more.
It's gonna be more than Kelly Olynyk, who got the 13 that I've been reporting he was gonna get. So
would you extend Smart right now? Would you try and extend him now?
Absolutely, in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I would.
Do you think any way he says yes to that? I don't think he would.
No way. What? They would have to give him a 4-year, $18 million offer for him to take him right now.
Well, I don't know. I mean, look, restricted free agency actually hasn't gone that well for guys, though.
So it's gone terribly this year. It's been awful.
Right.
But
it's been awful, and I don't know that it will. I don't see it changing between now and then too much. You know what I'm saying? I think that they still have a lot of the same problems, and especially if you're someone who thinks Marcus Smart is a point guard, which I think a lot of the league seems to be a little bit focused on that, and making Marcus Smart just the point guard values also team tends to be a little bit lower than that. So I'm not totally sure that Marcus wouldn't agree to an extension. I think that it would have to be something a little bit more than the 13 million. I think it'd need to be something like 14 or 15. But you know, if you, for example, like if they give Marcus that next year, I'm projecting like 147 million, and that's with I'm projecting like the Lakers pick at 5 and the Nets pick at 10, which is a pretty solid sandbag. I think most people expect the Nets pick to be quite a bit higher.
Lakers 2, and everybody's happy.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. But those projections could go up, you know, as much as I don't know. Those projections could go up as much as not 10 million more, but like $8 million more. And then you're up at 150. The tax line next year is going to be around 123 million. So you're already starting at 20 something million dollars over the cap, or over the tax. And if you do that 3 years in a row, all of a sudden you're in the repeater, and that's when things get really gross and ugly. So I don't know.
The punitive scaling of the tax, where it gets, the more you're over the tax, the more you're paying. It's like, you know, so they're paying what, 50 to 60 million in tax next year at those numbers, maybe even
those numbers, something like that. I ran the numbers because it scales up depending on the buckets. I think, and I get the repeater one mixed up with just the regular taxpayer one, but I think it does end up being around about $50 million or something like that. And this is part of the reason that Avery Bradley was probably always going to be the one who was going to get traded and not Jay Crowder, because
it's kind of why I've been saying this whole time that it was
right.
I didn't know for sure, but that's kind of what the indications were. Is anyone still listening, by the way? Did we lose him at 8 million for the
right? Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I just want, like, I think that's substantial, like right there. And then you've also got to roll over all those costs again, you know, into next year. And, you know, Terry Rozier's free agency. I mean, I guess no one's going to lose any sleep over, you know, what are they going to pay Terry Rozier? But
we'll find out.
Yeah,
the hype train's starting to build up very quietly.
Right. But I mean,
I heard a lot of hype in Vegas about Terry Rozier, so we'll see.
Let's talk about that. I mean, they got rid of Dimitri.
Before we even talk about that, can we talk about HelloFresh, which is the premier meal kit delivery service that makes, the only reason why I gotta do it because we're just flying through this thing and we haven't mentioned HelloFresh.
Yeah.
Not an easy segue. HelloFresh is the meal kit delivery service that makes cooking more fun so you can focus on the whole experience, not just the final plate each week. HelloFresh creates new, delicious recipes with step-by-step instructions designed to take around 30 minutes so that anybody from novices to seasoned home cooks short on time, they can make tasty meals. HelloFresh sources the freshest ingredients, measured to the exact quantities needed, so there's no food waste, and they employ 2 full-time registered dietitians on staff who review each recipe to ensure it is nutritionally balanced. They deliver your food into your doorstep, you know, in a recyclable, insulated box for free, and they're now offering light summer meals and have introduced breakfast. Listeners of this show and CLNS Media get a very special offer. Use the promo code BEAT30 for $30 off your first week of HelloFresh. Go to HelloFresh.com. Use the promo code BEAT30. So that's going to do it for this episode of Celtics Roundtable. I want to thank Sam Sheehan and Jared Weiss of CelticsBlog. If you are watching this on YouTube, hit that like button and then subscribe to CLNS Media. It's super easy if you're watching us, okay? If you're listening to us on the go, on your phones, on your smartphones, make sure you subscribe to the Boston Celtics newsfeed. You can do it on iTunes. You can do it on Stitcher. You can download the CLNS Radio mobile app. Super easy to do. Again, anybody can do it. Even my father can do it, and he has no idea how to use a phone. I might have to tell him how to do it. Maybe. If you have Twitter, follow us on Twitter at CLNS Roundtable. We tweet out all our content there. We're always tweeting out stuff. If you are a subscriber to iTunes, make sure you give us a 5-star review and just bash Sam in the comments section. You can tell me I look funny. I don't know, but everybody seems to have more fun making fun of Sam. We'll be back.
That's canon, baby.
Yeah, that's it.
That's high school, college. That's everywhere. Woo!
Just hanging on. We'll be back with more Celtics Roundtable in the near future. For Sam Sheehan, for Jared Weiss, I'm Evan Valenti. I'll see you guys next time on Celtics Roundtable on CLNS Media.